Commander Diana Wright rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the blinking light on her console. The signal had been coming in for 3 hours now, repeating on a frequency that hadn't been used in decades. She took a sip of her coffee and pressed the receive button. "This is Commander Wright of the United Earth Alliance. Identify yourself." The screen flickered to life. Diana gasped. The alien before her had pale blue skin that seemed almost translucent. Its large, almond-shaped eyes blinked slowly, and its slender neck supported a head that seemed too large for its frail body. "I am Zelenara, ambassador of the Aldari Confederation. We need your help, Commander. We are dying." Diana straightened in her chair. In the 30 years since humanity had ventured beyond their solar system, they had encountered various alien species. Most kept their distance. Earth was classified as a death world, a planet with high gravity, dangerous wildlife, extreme weather, and a toxic-filled atmosphere that somehow produced sentient life. Humans were seen as dangerous curiosities, best avoided. "Ambassador, this is unexpected. The Aldari have declined all previous communication attempts." Zelenara S. Large. Eyes closed briefly in what Diana recognized as shame. "Yes, we believed your kind too volatile, too primitive. We were wrong, and now we pay for our arrogance." The ambassador explained that the Corvin Imperium, a militaristic species from the Outer Rim, had begun attacking Aldari colonies. Aldari and their 12 allied species were peaceful. They had no weapons, no armies. "We searched our historical records," Zelenara said. "Your species thrives in conflict. You have survived conditions that would kill most sentient beings. We need those skills now." Diana promised to relay the message and ended the transmission. She immediately called Admiral Paul Jackson. "They want our help?" Admiral Jackson's weathered face showed surprise. "The same folks who called us dangerous primitives at the Galactic Council?" "Yes, sir. The Corvins have already taken 3 of their worlds. The Aldari have no concept of warfare. Their species evolved on a world without predators." Jackson stroked his beard. "Get me everything we have on the Corvins and the Aldari. I'll call an emergency meeting of the Security Council." The next day, Diana stood before the Earth Security Council, a group of 15 men and women representing Earth's United Nations. She explained the situation as images of the Aldari and Corvins displayed on the large screen behind her. The Aldari evolved on a low-gravity world with stable climate and no natural predators. They're physically weak, but technologically advanced. The Corvins come from a moderate gravity world with seasonal predators. They're stronger than the Aldari, but would still be considered fragile by Earth standards. Council President Maria Ortiz leaned forward. "Why should we help beings who have shunned us?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Diana replied. "And because this is our chance to show the galaxy that humans are more than just dangerous animals from a death world." After hours of debate, the vote was cast. Earth would send help. The 7th Marine Expeditionary Force was chosen for the mission. These weren't just soldiers. They were specialists trained to operate in Earth's most extreme environments, from the crushing depths of the ocean to the oxygen-thin peaks of mountains. From scorching deserts to frozen TUNDRAS. Captain Alan Foster stood at attention as Admiral Jackson briefed him on the mission. At 6 feet tall with broad shoulders and a frame hardened by years in the Australian outback, Foster was the perfect example of what a human from a death world looked like. "The Aldari need our help, Captain," Jackson said. "But they also fear U.S. Your job is to save them without confirming their worst fears about humanity." "Understood, sir. My team can handle it." "I hope so. Because right now, we're the monsters. They're desperate enough to ask for help." Foster assembled his team on the launch bay of the space station. 50 men and women stood before him, each a specialist in survival and combat. "Listen up, Foster," called out. "We're deploying to help a species that thinks we're barely more than animals. They're physically weak. The gravity on their world is about 60% of Earth's. Their idea of extreme weather is what we'd call a pleasant spring day." This earned a few chuckles from the troops. "The enemy, the Corvins, are stronger, but still nothing compared to us. Both species would die in minutes on Earth without protective gear. Remember that when you meet them. What feels like a friendly pat to you might break their bones." Lieutenant Ryan Davis raised his hand. "Sir, what about our equipment? Will it work in their environment?" "Good question. Their tech is more advanced than ours in many ways, but they've never needed to build things to withstand extreme conditions. We're bringing our own gear, modified to interface with their systems. Lieutenant, your engineering team will handle those adaptations." Foster looked at the faces before him. Some were excited, others nervous, but all were ready. "We leave in 6 hours. The journey will take 2 weeks in the UEA vessel, Intrepid. Study the files on your tablets. Learn everything about Aldari culture, biology, and technology. I don't want any accidents because someone didn't know their own strength." As the team dispersed to prepare, Science Officer Megan Collins approached Foster. "Captain, I've been studying the atmospheric composition of HFY. It's remarkably clean, almost no pollutants, very little pollen, no volcanic ash." Foster nodded. "They've probably engineered it that way. What's your point?" "Well, our bodies are adapted to process toxins. Earth plants produce thousands of natural pesticides. Our food would poison them, and their food might not provide enough nutrients for us. Make sure the kitchen is stocked with our own supplies then." "Anything else?" Megan hesitated. "Sir, they're going to be shocked by us. Not just our strength, but our behaviors. We sweat, we bleed easily, we eat things that would kill them. We're loud and aggressive by their standards." Foster smiled grimly. "Good. Let them be shocked. Sometimes fear is useful, especially in war." As the Intrepid prepared for departure, Diana Wright received one last message from Zelenara. "The Corvins have taken another colony. They're moving faster than we expected. Please hurry." Diana watched from the control room as the Intrepid engaged its engines and disappeared into the darkness of space. She couldn't help but wonder if they were sending saviors, or just a different kind of monster. "Good luck," she whispered. "Show them what Earth's Deathworlders can really do." The Intrepid dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a slight shudder. Through the main viewport, HFY came into view, a world of soft blues and greens, with wispy white clouds and 3 small moons. Captain Alan Foster stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. "It looks peaceful." "Too peaceful," said Lieutenant Kelly Rodriguez, his second in command. "No defense systems, no orbital platforms. They're completely exposed." The communications officer's console beeped. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission." From the surface, the screen lit up with Zelenara's face. The Aldari ambassador looked even more frail than in the earlier transmissions. "Captain Foster, welcome to our world. Please prepare for landing coordinates." "Ambassador, we'd like to send a small team to meet with you first. Standard protocol." Zelenara blinked rapidly, a sign of confusion. "Is there danger?" Foster exchanged glances with Rodriguez. These aliens truly had no concept of basic security. "It's just procedure, Ambassador. My team will arrive in a shuttle within the hour." The landing party consisted of Foster, Rodriguez, Science Officer Megan Collins, and Lieutenant Ryan Davis, the team's engineer. As their shuttle descended, Collins reviewed her data. The gravity is 0.6 Earth standard. The air has higher oxygen content, but fewer trace elements. Temperature is a constant 70 degrees Fahrenheit across most of the planet. Paradise, Davis said with a smirk. For some, Collins replied, but their bodies never developed our muscle, density, or bone strength. They have minimal immune systems because there are almost no pathogens. Even their digestive systems are simplified. The shuttle landed in a plaza made of a pearly white material. A small group of Aldari waited, their slender bodies draped in flowing garments of soft colors. Behind them rose a city of elegant towers and arching bridges, all seemingly grown rather than built. As the humans stepped out, there was a collective gasp from the Aldari. Even though the Earth team had been briefed, the difference was shocking in person. The tallest Aldari would barely reach Foster's chest. Their limbs were thin, almost fragile-looking, and they moved with a grace that seemed almost like floating in the lower gravity. Zelenara stepped forward. "Captain Foster, welcome." The ambassador's voice was musical, with a slight tremble. Foster nodded, careful not to extend his hand for a shake that might injure the alien. "Thank you for the welcome, Ambassador. We came as quickly as we could." Aldari led them to a transport platform that floated silently to a tall, crystal-like structure at the city's center. Inside, a council chamber awaited them, with 12 Aldari seated in a circle. Foster noticed they sat farther apart after the humans entered, as if afraid of being too close. The head counselor, introduced as Selvax, addressed them. "We appreciate Earth's response to our plea, though many of us had reservations about inviting Deathworlders into our realm." Foster kept his face neutral, though he felt Rodriguez tense beside him. "We understand your concerns. We're here to help, not to cause harm." "Yet harm is exactly what we need," said another counselor. "The Corvins have taken 4 of our colony worlds. They kill any who resist, enslave the rest. Our people have never faced such violence." Collins spoke up. "May I ask, what defenses do you currently have in place?" The council members looked at each other in confusion. "We have shield technology for weather events," one said finally, "but nothing designed to stop sentient beings." Davis couldn't hide his disbelief. "No weapons at all? Not even from your ancient history?" "Our evolution didn't require them," Zelenara explained. "Our world had no large predators. Our civilization developed through cooperation, not competition." Foster nodded slowly. "I'd like to see your technical capabilities, your manufacturing facilities, and any data you have on the Corvin forces." The next several hours were a blur of information. The humans were shown incredible technology, medical systems that could regrow limbs, energy generation that drew power from the quantum vacuum, transportation networks that defied Earth's understanding of physics. Yet Davis grew increasingly frustrated. All this amazing tech, and not one thing designed to protect yourselves. An Aldari engineer named Tiran tilted his head. "Why would we need such things?" "Until the Corvins, there was no threat." "There's always a threat," Rodriguez muttered. That evening, the Earth team was given quarters in a building that overlooked the capital city. The rooms were beautiful, but uncomfortable for humans. The beds too soft, the chairs too low, the doorways requiring them to duck. Foster called his team together. "Thoughts?" Collins went first. "Their technology is incredible, but utterly specialized for peace. They've eliminated disease, hunger, even natural disasters. But they're physically incapable of fighting." "Their manufacturing can be converted," Davis said. "I saw equipment that could be repurposed to make defensive systems. With a few adjustments, we could create weapons that even the Aldari could use." Rodriguez shook her head. "They'd still need to be willing to use them. These people flinch when we raise our voices. How will they react to the sound of gunfire?" A soft chime interrupted them. Foster opened the door to find Zelenara waiting. "Captain, news has arrived. The Corvins have been detected approaching Neva 3, one of our most populated colonies. They will arrive in 3 days, Foster straightened. Then we need to move quickly. How many of your people are on that colony? Nearly 1 million. The humans exchanged grim looks. Ambassador, Foster said, I need your counsel to approve immediate action. We'll deploy our team to Neva 3 within 12 hours. What will you do? Zelenara asked, eyes wide. What we evolved to do, Foster replied. We'll fight. The next morning, the humans demonstrated their combat training in a large garden space. The Aldari Council watched in horror as the Earth team ran drills, lifted weights that would crush an Aldari, and practiced hand-to-hand combat. One counselor fled the demonstration when Rodriguez casually ate a protein bar containing capsaicin, a compound toxic to Aldari physiology. Another nearly fainted when Davis cut his hand on equipment and showed minimal reaction to what would be a life-threatening injury to an Aldari. They're monsters, whispered one counselor to Selvax. Yes, the head counselor replied. But they are our monsters now. By nightfall, the Intrepid was ready to depart for Neva 3. Foster stood at the shuttle bay with Zelenara. We'll do everything we can to save your people, Foster promised. Zelenara's large eyes were troubled. Captain, the Corvins are brutal, but they follow a code of warfare. You and your kind, you are unpredictable. You evolved in conditions that would kill most sentient life. What you consider restraint, we see as unbridled violence. Foster looked down at the frail alien. Sometimes it takes monsters to fight monsters, Ambassador. The difference is, we choose when to be monstrous. The Corvins don't. As the shuttle lifted off, Foster looked back at the peaceful world below. These people had created a paradise, a civilization without conflict or hardship. They had never needed Earth's greatest skill, survival against all odds. Now they would see what Deathworlders could do. Neva 3 hung in space like a jewel, its surface a swirl of teal oceans and emerald landmasses. Unlike Earth with its churning storms and ice caps, this world seemed gentle, designed for comfort rather than challenge. Captain Alan Foster stood on the bridge of the Intrepid, studying the tactical display. The Corvin fleet will arrive in 6 hours. What's the status of the evacuation? Communications specialist Laura Wilson shook her head. The Aldari are trying, sir, but they've never done a mass evacuation before. Their ships are mostly scientific, or pleasure vessels. They might get 20% of the population off-world at most. Foster's jaw tightened. Then we stand and fight. Lieutenant Rodriguez, prepare the drop teams. The plan was simple but risky. While the Intrepid engaged the Corvin ships in orbit, 50 human Marines would deploy to the surface to protect the main Aldari city. They would be outnumbered at least 10 to 1 in the armory. The team prepared their equipment. Earth weapons had been modified for the lower gravity and different atmospheric conditions. Lieutenant Ryan Davis had worked with Aldari engineers to integrate some of their technology into human gear. These personal shields will stop most energy weapons, Davis explained, passing out wristbands to the squad leaders. But they'll fail under sustained fire, and they drain quickly. Use them wisely. Sergeant Greg Phillips checked his rifle. What about the terrain? Any advantages we can use? Science Officer Megan Collins brought up a holographic map. The city is surrounded by forests to the north and east, mountains to the west, and an ocean to the south. The Aldari consider the mountain passes impassable due to temperature variations and steep climbs. Phillips grinned. Sounds like a walk in the park compared to basic training in the Rockies. Exactly, Foster said, joining them. We'll use the mountains. Rodriguez, take your stealth team through the western passes. When the Corvins land, hit them from behind. Rodriguez nodded. They won't expect anyone to come from that direction. Phillips, your squad will defend the city center where most civilians are gathered. Davis, Set up your engineering team at these junction points. I want traps, barriers, anything to slow them down. The Marines continued their preparations with practiced efficiency. The Aldari observers watched in silent awe as the humans checked weapons, memorized maps, and discussed tactics with a calm that bordered on casual. One Aldari representative, Fenelai, approached Foster hesitantly. "Captain, our people are frightened. They've never seen battle." "Keep them indoors," Foster replied. "Away from windows, preferably in basement levels." "We don't have basements. There's never been a need to build underground." Foster sighed. "Of course not. Then gather them in the most central buildings, away from the outer walls." The Intrepids. Sensors blared an alert. The Corvin fleet had arrived early, 5 large warships and dozens of smaller vessels. The battle for orbit began immediately, with the Intrepid engaging the lead Corvin vessels. Foster's team had to launch now or risk being trapped on the ship. 50 Marines boarded drop pods, stripped-down vessels designed to plummet through atmosphere with minimal detection. "Remember," Foster told them over the com, "we're not just fighting for the Aldari. We're showing the galaxy what humans can do. Good hunting." The pods launched, streaking toward the surface like meteors. As they descended, they got their first look at the Corvins. Orbital scans showed them to be taller than the Aldari, but still shorter than the average human. They had gray-green skin and moved with predatory grace. Their technology was clearly designed for war: sleek ships, armored ground vehicles, energy weapons that could level buildings. The Marines landed in a forested area 5 miles from the city. They assembled quickly, setting up a perimeter as Foster assessed the situation. "Corvin forces are landing on the southern plain," Lara Wilson reported, monitoring communications. "I count at least 20 dropships. Estimate 500 ground troops. They're not bothering with stealth." Davis noted. "They don't expect resistance." Foster nodded. "Let's use that. Rodriguez, is your team in position?" Rodriguez's voice came through the comm, slightly breathless from her climb through the mountain pass. "Almost there, Captain. We've encountered no resistance. These mountains would be a tourist hike on Earth, but I see why the Aldari think they're impassable. Basic rocks and a 20-degree incline. Good. Wait for my signal, and hit their rear flank." The Corvins moved with disciplined precision toward the city. Their advance guard swept the area with sensors, but they were calibrated for Aldari. Life signs, not human ones. The Earth Marines remained undetected as they took up positions throughout the forest and along the city's edge. Foster watched through binoculars as the Corvin commander addressed his troops. Even from a distance, Foster could read the arrogance in his posture. "Wilson, can you pick up what they're saying?" Lavra adjusted her equipment. "They're speaking in their native language, but my translator is working. The commander is telling them this will be an easy conquest, that the Aldari are weak and ... wait, ... double quotes." Her eyes widened. "They know humans are here. They're saying we're just another soft species that's never faced real war." Philip snorted. "Soft? I'd like to see. Then survive one day in the Australian outback." "They're about to find out what Earth humans are made of," Foster said. "All teams, prepare to engage on my mark." The Corvins entered the outskirts of the city, weapons drawn but held casually. They expected no resistance, just terrified Aldari. To round up, Foster waited until the main force was fully committed. "All teams, execute." The forest erupted with gunfire. Earth weapons, while more primitive than Corvin energy rifles, had one major advantage: they were projectile-based. The personal shields the Corvins wore were designed to stop energy blasts, not physical bullets. The first wave of Corvins fell before they could return fire. The rest scrambled for cover, suddenly facing an enemy they couldn't see from the mountains. Rodriguez and her team launched their attack on the Corvin rear. Caught in a crossfire, the alien forces fell into disarray. Corvin officer rallied his troops, directing fire into the forest. Energy blasts tore through trees, forcing the humans to move positions constantly. Phillips led his squad in a flanking maneuver, using the city's architecture for cover. The buildings, designed for beauty rather than defense, provided surprisingly good shooting positions. The battle raged for hours. The Corvins, recovering from their initial shock, began to adapt to human tactics. They modified their shields, adjusted their sensors to detect human life signs, and called in air support. Foster watched as Corvin dropships appeared overhead. "Davis, we need those ships down." "On it, Captain." The engineer activated the traps. His team had set throughout the city, repurposed Aldari technology, now turned to warfare. Energy pulses shot upward, disrupting the dropship's control systems. Two crashed into each other, while a third veered away, trailing smoke. By nightfall, the remaining Corvin forces retreated to their landing zone. Of the 500 who had landed, fewer than 300 remained combat effective. The human forces had lost 8 Marines, with 15 others wounded. In the makeshift command center, Foster received a transmission from the Corvin commander. "You fight well for a species we've never encountered," the alien said, his translated voice filled with grudging respect. "But you are still outnumbered. Surrender the city, and we will allow your forces to leave unharmed." Foster smiled coldly. "We're just getting started. You haven't seen what humans can really do yet." As night fell completely, Rodriguez's team moved silently through the darkness without night vision equipment. Unlike both the Aldari and Corvins, humans could adjust to low light conditions naturally. The real battle was about to begin. The Corvin commander slammed his fist on the tactical display. 3 days of fighting, and his forces had made almost no progress into the Aldari city. It was impossible. 50 defenders should not be able to hold off his elite troops. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his officers. His second-in-command pointed to the display. "They never stay in one position. They move constantly, attack from unexpected angles, then disappear. They fight like ... like nothing we've ever encountered. They're just another soft species from a protected world," the commander growled. "Bring in the heavy artillery. Level the city if necessary." Across the battlefield, in a building near the city center, Captain Foster received grim news. The Intrepid had been badly damaged in orbit by the Corvin fleet. The ship had managed to destroy 2 enemy vessels before being forced to retreat to the far side of the moon for emergency repairs. How long until they're operational? Foster asked communications specialist Laura Wilson. "At least 4 days, Captain. And Admiral Jackson reports that reinforcements are still 3 weeks away." Lieutenant Davis looked up from the makeshift workbench where he had been modifying equipment. "We're on our own." Foster nodded. "Status report." Science Officer Megan Collins displayed a holographic map of the city. "We've held them at these 3 entry points, but our ammunition is running low. The Aldari manufacturing plants are producing more, but they're slow, and the Corvins are bringing in heavier weapons." "Casualties?" 12 dead, 20 wounded. Dr. Nelson has set up a field hospital in the central plaza. He's training Aldari volunteers as medics." Foster's expression was grim. Even with the element of surprise and superior tactics, they were outnumbered and outgunned, but giving up wasn't an option. "We need to change our approach." "Rodriguez, what did you find on your night recon?" Lieutenant Kelly Rodriguez pulled up. Images on her tactical pad. "The Corvins have set up a forward base here, 2 miles south of the city. They've landed 6 more troop ships. I estimate at least 400 fresh troops. They're learning Foster mused. They've improved their shields to stop our bullets and adapted their sensors to detect us. Sergeant Phillips entered the room, his uniform dirty and torn from fighting. Captain, you need to see this. They followed Phillips to a nearby building, where several Aldari were gathered around an injured Corvan soldier. Dr. Eric Nelson, the expedition's medical officer, was examining the alien. What happened? Foster asked. We captured him during their last push, Phillips explained. He's been hit, but not badly. The interesting part is what the doc found. Nelson looked up. Their biology is remarkable, Captain. They've been genetically modified for warfare. Enhanced muscles, redundant organs, accelerated healing. But he pointed to a strange rash developing on the Corvan's skin. They're having a reaction to something in this environment. Collins moved closer. The pollen. Earth plants produce natural toxins as defense mechanisms. We've evolved to handle them, but neither the Aldari nor the Corvans have. Can we use this? Foster asked. Maybe. Collins turned to one of the Aldari scientists who had been working with her. Do you have samples of local plant life that might contain similar compounds? The Aldari, named Veltar, nodded. We avoid several species because they cause mild irritation. They're considered nuisance plants. Take me to them, Collins said. Later that day, Foster gathered his team leaders. Their situation was growing more desperate. The Corvans had begun a heavy bombardment of the city's outer districts. Aldari civilians huddled in the central buildings, terrified by the violence they had never before experienced. We can't win a conventional fight, Foster told them. We're going to change tactics. Collins? The science officer displayed the results of her work. We've developed what I call environmental weapons. Concentrated extracts from local plants that cause severe reactions in Corvan physiology. Lieutenant Davis has created delivery systems. Davis held up what looked like simple grenades. These will release a fine mist when detonated. It won't harm the Aldari and will be mostly immune, but it should incapacitate Corvan troops within minutes. We're also setting up gravity traps, Rodriguez added. Using Aldari technology, we can create localized fields of Earth-normal gravity. To us, it's home. To the Corvans, it will feel like being crushed. Foster nodded. Good. We deploy these new weapons tonight. Phillips, your team will target their command center. Rodriguez, hit their supply lines. As they prepared for the night's operation, Foster received a communication from HFY. Zelenarai's face appeared on the screen, looking even more worried than before. Captain Foster, the Corvans have attacked 2 more of our worlds. Our people are panicking. The Council. Some members believe we should surrender. Foster's face hardened. Tell them to hold on. We're making progress here. The Council is watching the battle through our observation satellites. The violence. It frightens them almost as much as the Corvans do. Sometimes survival requires violence, Ambassador. We're fighting for your people. Zelenara's large eyes blinked slowly. Some are beginning to wonder if we've replaced one monster with another. After the transmission ended, Foster stood silently for a moment. Then he turned to Wilson. Get me a channel to the entire city. When the communication system was ready, Foster spoke to both his troops and the Aldari civilians. This is Captain Foster. I know many of you are frightened. The Aldari have never known war, and to you, we humans may seem as violent as the Corvans. But there is a difference. We fight to protect, not to conquer. We use our strength to defend those who cannot defend themselves. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Humanity evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We faced predators, diseases, natural disasters. We survived because we learned to fight back, but we also learned compassion. We learned to protect the weak, to build civilizations, based on cooperation as well as strength. That is why we're here. Throughout the city, Aldari listened to his words. Some began to understand. That night, the humans launched their counterattack. The new weapons worked better than expected. Corvin troops collapsed as the plant extracts hit their respiratory systems. Others staggered under the sudden crush of Earth-normal gravity fields. For the first time, the Corvins retreated in disarray, but their commander was not defeated. From orbit, he ordered a new strategy: simultaneous attacks on 3 sides. Of the city, the human defenders were stretched thin. Foster knew they couldn't hold all 3 fronts. We need to evacuate as many civilians as possible, he told his team. The Corvins will be back with everything they have. As dawn broke, a new development changed the battlefield. Aldari ships appeared in orbit, not just from Neva 3, but from other worlds as well. The transmission that came through was not from Zelenara, but from Selvax, the head counselor. Captain Foster, your words last night were broadcast throughout our Confederation. For the first time, many of our people understand what it means to fight for something greater than oneself. We have sent every ship we could gather. We stand with Earth. Foster smiled grimly. The Aldari ships weren't warships, but their arrival had surprised the Corvin fleet, buying precious time. On the ground, something even more surprising happened. Aldari civilians approached the human positions, offering to help. They couldn't fight, but they could support, carrying supplies, tending the wounded, even helping Davis build more of his defensive devices. As the sun rose fully, Foster looked out over the city they had defended. Parts of it were in ruins, its once perfect symmetry broken by the scars of battle. But for the first time, he saw real hope in the eyes of the Aldari. The Corvins would return, stronger than before. But they would find that the Deathworlders from Earth are no longer fighting alone. The Corvin Emperor's face filled the view screen, his gray-green skin darkened with rage. His eyes, vertical slits like a reptile's, narrowed as he addressed his fleet commander. You assured me this would be a simple conquest, the Emperor hissed. Yet a handful of aliens from a world we've never heard of have humiliated our forces. The commander bowed his head. They are unlike any species we've encountered, Emperor. They call their homeworld Earth, a planet with conditions that would kill most sentient life. They are stronger, faster, and more resilient than they appear. I don't want excuses. I want victory. The Emperor's voice grew cold. I am sending the royal fleet. I will lead personally. We will crush these Earthers and make an example of them to the entire galaxy. On Neva 3, Captain Foster received the news with grim determination. The orbital sensors showed a massive Corvin fleet approaching 20 warships, including the Emperor's flagship, a vessel 3 times larger than any they had faced before. They'll be here in 12 hours, Foster told his team. The Intrepid is back online, but still damaged. Our reinforcements are still 2 weeks out. Lieutenant Davis looked up from his workbench, where he had been assembling new weapons with the help of Aldari engineers. We've improved the gravity traps and plant toxin dispersal systems, but against that many troops, we'll need something bigger, Foster agreed. Something they won't expect. Science Officer Collins had been working with Veltur and other Aldari scientists. She pulled up a holographic display of the planet. Captain, I have an idea. It's called Operation Thunderstorm. Foster listened as Collins outlined her plan. It was audacious, dangerous, and exactly what they needed. Can we really trigger a storm of that magnitude? He asked. Veltur nodded. Our weather control systems were designed to prevent such events, but they can be reprogrammed. We've never considered using weather as a weapon. On Earth, we've survived hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and worse, Foster said. The Corvins evolved on a world with mild seasons and predictable weather. This could work. They spent the next hours in frantic preparation. Aldari civilians evacuated the coastal areas where the storm would hit hardest. The human Marines positioned themselves in key locations, ready to strike when the moment came. Lieutenant Rodriguez led a team to the mountain passes west of the city. "These charges will trigger a landslide when detonated," she explained to her squad. "We'll cut off their retreat route." Sergeant Phillips and his team moved into position along the southern approach. "The Emperor will expect us to defend the city center again," Phillips told Foster over the comm. "But we'll hit them from where they least expect it." As the Corvin fleet entered orbit, Foster broadcast a message to all his forces and the Aldari volunteers who had joined them. "Today, we face overwhelming odds. The Corvin Emperor believes his superior numbers guarantee victory. But numbers aren't everything. On Earth, we've learned that the most dangerous predator isn't always the biggest or strongest. It's the one that adapts, that uses its environment, that never gives up." He paused, looking at the determined faces around him. "The Aldari asked for our help because we come from a death world. Today, we'll show the Corvins exactly what that means." The Corvin landing ships descended like a swarm of insects. Thousands of troops poured onto the plains south of the city, led by the Emperor, himself in gleaming black armor. His forces moved with confident precision, formed in tight battle formations. Foster waited until they were fully committed to their advance. Then he gave the signal. Across the planet, Aldari weather control stations activated simultaneously. The air pressure plummeted. Clouds formed with unnatural speed, darkening the sky. Winds rose from a gentle breeze to a howling gale within minutes. The Corvins faltered as the storm grew around them. Their communications equipment, designed for clear conditions, began to fail. Their sensors, calibrated for normal planetary conditions, gave false readings. Lightning struck among their ranks, called down by Towers Davis and his team had modified. Rain fell in sheets, turning the ground to mud that slowed the Corvin advance. To a crawl. Then the human Marines attacked. From hidden positions, they struck at the disoriented Corvin forces. Unlike their enemies, the humans were used to fighting in extreme conditions. On Earth, Marines trained in deserts, jungles, Arctic, wastes, and storm-tossed seas. Foster led a squad directly toward Corvin Command Group. The Emperor, unused to personal danger, was surrounded by elite guards. But they had never faced opponents like the humans. Rodriguez's team detonated their charges in the mountain passes. Earth-shaking rumbles echoed across the battlefield as massive landslides cut off the Corvin retreat routes. At the same time, Collins activated the gravity traps along the enemy's flanks. Suddenly, hundreds of Corvin soldiers found themselves struggling under the crushing weight of Earth-normal gravity, their bodies not evolved to handle such pressure. The Emperor, seeing his forces thrown into chaos, ordered an immediate retreat. But Phillips and his squad had infiltrated the Corvin landing zone. The transports that were supposed to carry the troops back to orbit lay disabled or destroyed. As the storm reached its peak, Foster faced the Corvin Emperor across a rain-lashed clearing. The alien ruler raised his energy weapon, but Foster was faster. A single shot disabled the Emperor's armor, leaving him vulnerable to the planet's conditions for the first time. The Emperor fell to his knees, struggling to breathe in the heavy rain. "What are you?" he gasped. "We're humans," Foster replied simply. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived." Overhead, the sky lit up with new energy signatures. For a moment, Foster feared the Corvins had brought reinforcements. Then Lavra Wilson's voice came through his comm unit. "Captain, it's the Intrepid, and they're not alone." The holographic display showed dozens of ships entering the system. Not just Earth vessels, but ships from other species as well. Wilson explained breathlessly. The Aldari broadcast our defense of Neva 3 across the galaxy. These are representatives from worlds that have also been threatened by the Corvins. They've come to stand with us. The Corvin fleet, seeing the Emperor captured and new forces arriving, began to retreat. The battle for Neva 3 was over. In the days that followed, Foster and his remaining Marines helped the Aldari begin rebuilding their city. The victory had cost them. 23 humans had died defending a world not their own. But their sacrifice had changed the galaxy's perception of humanity forever. 1 month later, Foster stood in the Great Council Chamber on HFY. Representatives from 24 species had gathered to formalize a new alliance, one dedicated to mutual protection and peace. Zelenara, now the head ambassador, addressed the assembly. We once feared the humans because they evolved on what we call the Death World. We saw only their capacity for violence, not their capacity for protection. We failed to understand that sometimes strength is necessary to preserve peace. The ambassador turned to Foster. Earth was classified as a dangerous planet and humans as a dangerous species. Today, we changed that classification. Earth is now recognized as the cradle of guardians, and humanity as the protectors of those who cannot protect themselves. As Foster accepted the formal alliance document, he thought of the Marines who had given their lives. They had shown the galaxy that humans were more than just survivors of a harsh world. They were defenders, protectors, a species that would face any danger to help those in need. The humans had been called Deathworlders. Now they had a new name, Guardians.